All right, Rebekah Roth here one more time, and I want to ask you to stick with me until the very end. I know it might seem like I'm crazy, but this all does come together in the end. Sometimes I feel like I'm in that commercial, if you remember. I don't remember what it was a commercial for, but I remember it was a commercial of somebody that had all these files in their computer open. And they didn't make any sense when they tried to talk because all their files were open and there was just too much information overload. So they didn't make any sense when they talked. And I do feel like that sometimes. So don't let yourself get overloaded here, because I'm about to drop a whole bunch of information on you. And I know how you feel because, listen, I have written this story on thousands of pieces of paper, and I'm with you on this. My files are all open, several browsers are open, and lots of documents are sitting here all at once. So buckle up. Here we go. Be patient. Stick till the end, because it really does come together. And it's important that you know this. On this video, I want to take you back in relatively recent history. And if you're old enough, as I am, I know I don't look it, and if you're old enough to remember the Cold War, this might begin to sound a little bit familiar to you. And if you're not old enough to remember the Cold War, well, lucky you. Put your cell phone down and enjoy a little history lesson, because this is pretty crazy and you might not get it anywhere else. You didn't ever have a Russian under your bed every night, right? So you don't know what we're talking about. By the end of the 1980s, the Central Intelligence Agency's proxy war in Afghanistan was coming to a rapid end. And not only that, well, the CIA had recruited lots of young Muslim men from the United States and really all over the world to fight for the CIA, that would be America, as foreign fighters, as President Ronald Reagan called them at that same time, freedom fighters. Now, at the same time that was going on, Iran was in a war with Iraq, and believe it or not, it was coming to an end as well. And in that war, the United States was on Team Saddam Hussein of Iraq. Can you believe that? Well, that lasted about 8 years, from 1980 to 1988. And so from about the mid-80s, our Congress had stopped funding the Nicaraguan Contras. That created a very interesting situation. It's sort of a black market situation for the CIA to arm the Contras, which they did using various nefarious methods, and I'm sure you've probably read or heard about them on YouTube, because it's out there, including illegally selling arms to the enemy, Iran. But the communists, the main boogeyman at the time in the communist Soviet Union, was collapsing. And the communists had been the boogeyman. By the year end of 1991, well, the Soviet Union had collapsed. There was no more communist Soviet Union, no more boogeyman. The military-industrial complex badly needed a new boogeyman. And that's where we're going to go with this. Your mission will be to figure out who it was that really needed a new boogeyman. I didn't need one. You probably didn't need one either. It was a very busy time in Washington, D.C. and in the Pentagon. And all their foreign co-conspirators were busy too, because we needed to have a boogeyman. Well, by the mid-80s, the Saudis offered up a guy named Osama bin Laden. He came from a very super wealthy family, and he had ties, believe it or not, to the intelligence community. Not just the Saudi Arabian intelligence. No. He was also in contact and connected to the CIA, and more than likely to the Israeli Mossad. As we can see now, the CIA is just a branch of the Israeli Mossad. They're not really separate. It's pretty clear now if you're looking around. And it's been that way, really, quite frankly, since 1963. And I think if you're not familiar with what happened, then you should look it up. Just Google it. Several players came into the view now about this same time. It's interesting because remember, we're looking for a boogeyman. Out of Egypt, we had Ali Mohammed. I recently did a video about him, arriving in America in 1985. Well, he ends up working for the CIA and the FBI, and it appears possibly the Israelis as well. The 2 years after that, another Egyptian intelligence guy named Imad Salim arrives in New York City. A few years later, he ends up going to work for the New York field office of, believe it or not, the FBI. Well, you've probably heard the video that I did about the FBI stings. That was all about Imad Salim. He admitted in his book, which unfortunately I read twice, and on tape, that he was the person who built the bomb under FBI supervision that blew up the World Trade Center tower in 1993. We still don't know if the FBI's original target was actually the World Trade Center or not. I guess nobody but me is asking that question. Anyway, in Israel about that same time, something else was going on. Bibi Netanyahu was creating and funding a group to counter the PLO, known as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Israel's enemy at the time. Well, this group that Bibi funded was actually called the Hamas. You probably heard about it if you've been listening to what's been going on, especially in Gaza, over the last couple years. You heard that right, Bibi funded it. All of this is going on from the mid-'80s until, I don't know, I guess today actually it's still going on. I was going to say 9/11, but no, it's actually still going on today. Just look at the Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, ISIS, HTS terrorist that is now the current president of Syria. So friendly with Israel that he's allowing the slaughter of the Syrian people and the occupation of southern Syria, probably clear into Damascus eventually, by the Israeli Defense Forces. What a guy. Doesn't seem like he's a terrorist that hates Israel, does it? Well, hint, hint. Who was behind Al-Qaeda and who was behind ISIS? Well, that was the CIA and the Mossad. I bet you can figure that out now. As I probably mentioned, I've read hundreds of books, as you might be able to see here, going down the 9/11 rabbit hole. Oh, I forgot. An important detail that that also happened in 1988 or so, the CIA claimed that Al-Qaeda was formed. Yeah, from the freedom fighters, from the Afghan Arabs who had fought for the CIA. And they claimed, the CIA, that Osama bin Laden was their leader. But these men, they were all fighting for Team USA via the CIA. They thought they were fighting for America, doing the right thing. And they were fighting for America as much as they were fighting against the Soviets. Well, a couple of years later, Osama bin Laden moved to Sudan. This was in 1991. And when he moved his entourage, they tell us that he called on Ali Mohammed to come and help move him. And nobody explains this because Ali Mohammed, he didn't own a moving company like some of the Mossad people we heard about on 9/11. He didn't own an airline. He didn't even own a truck. So how would Osama bin Laden call this guy Ali Mohammed to help him? He was living in California, not Afghanistan, not Sudan. Well, of all the gin joints, I mean, honestly, how do you explain this? Well, let me remind you. Ali Mohammed, you will remember, if you watch the video, was an Egyptian intelligence soldier from 1971 to 84, and then he joined the CIA. In 1986, he joined the U.S. Army, and he was based at the JFK Special Weapons Center at Fort Bragg, which is also a very well-known CIA base that houses our special forces, you know, things like the Army Rangers and those special forces. And I think that there may be some Navy SEALs there too. Well, there was always a rumor that Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset. Could that be where they met? And is that maybe what they shared in common, the CIA? Osama bin Laden, he was known as Tim Osman when he came to the United States in 1986, purchasing weapons, for the Afghan war. We know that from an FBI guy, now deceased, Ted Gunderson. He met with Osama bin Laden, who was going by the name Tim Osman, in California, and wrote about it. Well, in 1991, Osama bin Laden, as he gets moved to Sudan, and the CIA sets up surveillance on him. But wait a minute, how did the CIA even know he was moving from Afghanistan to Sudan? Were they tracking him? Oh, maybe Ali Mohammed told them. He was working with the CIA. Well, in Peter Lance's book, Triple Cross, it's painful, but you should probably read it. It says in there that Ali Mohammed likely joined the CIA clear back in 1981, and again, re-upped in 1984. He was working with also the Southern District of New York and the New York FBI since his time in Fort Bragg. Well, he went into Fort Bragg in 86, 87, and he was there until 1989. And now also in Peter Lance's book, Triple Cross, it tells that both Ali Mohammed and Imad Salem, two Egyptian intelligence guys, were both working with the Southern District of New York, that's like prosecutors, and the FBI with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the I-49 Bin Laden Special Unit, during this time. Well, over in Khartoum, Sudan, Osama is now under CIA surveillance by a former Green Beret, Special Forces, who watches Osama bin Laden's home. And then he follows him to work and he follows him to the mosque. He does this for 3+ years, from 91 until 94. His name was Billy Waugh. The Green Beret turned CIA operative, which is not unusual, says that Osama bin Laden didn't do anything that posed a threat to anyone in Sudan or to the United States of America. Before he stops his surveillance on Osama bin Laden, a new CIA chief shows up. His name was Cofer Black. You'll want to remember that name. Cofer Black goes on to return to Langley, where right before 9/11, he ends up running the Counterterrorism Center from about June of 99, and he was still the head of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center on 9/11. He knew Osama bin Laden was not a threat. He'd been there. By the way, this story is also in Billy Waugh's book. Of course, I've read a lot of books. Hunting the Jackals, the title. By December of 1998, this is now a full decade after Ali Mohammed is training the future FBI patsies, because that's what they were, that Imad Salem, the FBI, New York FBI, and the Southern District of New York set up in the sting operations. Well, George Tenet declares war on Osama bin Laden, of all things. Well, you would think Cofer Black would have straightened him out, but he didn't. Now, keep in mind, we learned from the British intelligence that at this very same time, both the Central Intelligence Agency and the Israeli Mossad had set up the Hamburg cell, and they were controlling it. Remember, there were 3 hijackers that never got on board that were from the Hamburg cell? Wrong. Okay, a new boogeyman was certainly being born at this time. I bet you're starting to see who it is, right? So back in the 90s, we go. In February of 1993, the FBI informant, the asset, he was all kinds of things, asset informant, he built a bomb that blew up one of the World Trade Center towers. It was set down up in the basement. That patsy, whose name was on the rental forms, lived and worked for an Israeli woman. Now, he was a Palestinian kid, about 20-something. She was in her 50s. Well, she was a known Mossad agent, and our FBI seemed to protect her. Imad Salem also knew her. By June of 1994, Imad Salem had framed several Muslim men that Ali himself had trained to shoot in the late 80s, like 1989 to be exact. And the blind sheikh, remember him? I mean, how can you blame a blind man for a bombing? But I digress. He claims in his Wikipedia, as does Imad Salem, that the blind sheikh was being protected by the CIA. It was payback, they said, for his recruiting men, many of them from the same mosque that Imad Salem went and set up these guys. That the blind sheikh spoke there after he came in July of 1990. Well, these men had all been surveilled by Imad Salem for the FBI since 1991. So the FBI had all their information. They knew what they drove, they knew where they lived, they had their phone numbers. But when that bomb went off in February of 93, the FBI tooted their own horn. They claimed that in their brilliance, they had found the guy who rented the van. Only what they refused, or maybe they just forgot to see, was the Israeli Mossad woman whose apartment they were led to by the rental form. And poor Imad Salem, he suffered ear damage from being way too close to that bomb when it went off. Well, does anybody think he wasn't involved in this now? Well, when it went off, the FBI put him on a witness protection program. But before that, I have to tell you, there's crazy stuff that goes on to these people that work with them. Anyway, in this case with Ali Mohammed, let's go back to him. One of the men that Ali Mohammed had trained in the late 80s, 89, to shoot guns. I guess he didn't learn that in Afghanistan. Anyway, he was accused of killing a rabbi that even most Israelis hated in New York. He was a real terrorist, this rabbi. Mir Kahani was his name. More on that later, because there is more on that. At that trial, he was accused, the accused rabbi shooter, his name was El Sayed Nosair, like nose hair, was acquitted for the murder, but he was found guilty on a gun charge, and they nailed him for like 22 years on a gun charge. Well, there were no fingerprints ever found on the gun. They said that he killed this Jewish rabbi, but they couldn't prove it. So, by the way, it's interesting. I found that Nosair actually was wearing a yarmulke when this shooting happened. We don't know if he was Jewish or not. Why would you wear that hat? Well, anyway, after Ali Mohammed gets out of the U.S. Army in 1989, he was in the reserves until I think 1994. So keep that in mind. He was living in California and he was flying all around the world, all over, and he never catches the eye of any federal government, FBI, CIA. Nobody cared where he was going. He was flying into places that he shouldn't be, but nobody cared. But somebody did catch him. A TWA agent supposedly reported him to the FBI because they found an empty Coke can for smuggling in his luggage. Well, that's not something agents usually do, but I digress. They called the FBI, but Ali Mohammed was already working for the FBI. So I guess they couldn't do anything to him. Anyway, when the U.S. Embassy bombings happened, Ali was actually living in Nairobi. Imagine that. There was 2 bombings. One was Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and one was in Nairobi, right where Ali was living. Well, the United States government eventually claimed that Osama bin Laden was behind everything that went boom. And I mean everything that went boom. They went back and blamed everything on him. Everything. But it was actually their own guys, Ali and Imad, that were seemingly much more involved in anything that went boom than Osama bin Laden. Well, before the 1998 bombing, the Southern District of New York prosecutor, or maybe he was a U.S. attorney at the time, Patrick Fitzgerald, and a couple of New York FBI guys from the New York office traveled to Sacramento to meet Ali Mohammed. This was in the fall of '97. About a year before the embassy bombings, keep that in mind, because at this point in time, Ali Mohammed's story, Peter Lance says in Triple Cross, there's no explanation to how Patrick Fitzgerald would even know of Ali Mohammed. How does he even know this guy? He wasn't in the Egyptian intelligence, so how did he know this guy? Well, the Al-Qaeda trainer, the instructor, and the spy, Ali Mohammed, how does he connect to Patrick Fitzgerald? Well, anyway, I'm not sure what to make of that, but let's keep going. These guys show up, they fly over to Sacramento, California, and they meet with Ali Mohammed in the fall of '97. And the book, Triple Cross, says that they intended at that time to either arrest Ali Mohammed or to turn him into a informant. But Peter Lance, he keeps forgetting this, and he probably wants the reader to forget it too. Ali Mohammed was with the CIA since 1981, 1984, and the FBI since 1988 and 1990. Well, turn him into what, a pumpkin? He was already working for the FBI. So I guess Peter forgets this. I don't know. I'm not sure where he tries to go take us with this. Anyway, also in that book, it says that when Imad Salem refused to take a lie detector test, now I've figured out this is probably in June or July of 1992, because he refused to take a lie detector test and he basically was gone. The FBI and the Southern District of New York together said, we have Ali out on the West Coast. That was in the summer of 1992. They already knew they had this guy, so 5 years before the trip to Sacramento. Anyway, Patrick Fitzgerald tells the two FBI goons, after I think Ali leaves the restaurant, that Ali is the most dangerous man on the planet. But they didn't arrest him. They just let him go. No explanation. Well, a month after the embassy bombings, a year after this meeting, they arrest Ali Mohammed. Much like when Imad Salem claims in his book, right after the 1993 bombing, he says he went into 26 Federal, the FBI office in New York, and there on the wall, much to his surprise, right at the top of a pyramid of photographs of suspects, all familiar faces to Imad Salem, was his very own photo. He was the number one suspect. The FBI had their guy, their asset, their informant, their bomb maker, Imad Salem, tagged as the number one suspect in the World Trade Center bombing. Now, most people you would think would likely turn around and cancel their offer to help, but not Imad Salem. Oh, no, 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 no. Maybe because he was caught there and maybe he felt guilty. The FBI quickly changed the story, much like they did about the manifests on 9/11. They removed his photo and they used him to set up the rest of the men, most of them were Egyptians, that the FBI had tried to recruit in 1992, I believe in the fall. And they were all framed in a sting operation that Imad Salem gladly set up for the FBI. He made about $1 million from, us taxpayers, the US government, lying against these people, or should I say lying at the trial. Well, here's what caught my eye. First, in the book, Triple Cross, Andrew McCarthy, you might know him from Fox News. Well, he was, I think, the assistant U.S. attorney at Southern District of New York under Patrick Fitzgerald at the time, if I remember correctly. It seems that Ali Mohammed had actually been working with the Southern District of New York attorneys and the FBI since his time in Fort Bragg. And when the shooter of the rabbi was on trial for the landmark bombings, they never happened, so if you didn't know about him, I didn't either. Well, he'd been in prison for a few years, so how did he do that? Well, they took him down for that, but when he was in trial for the second time, Nose Hair, it's how I remember his name, they went after him. They didn't like the fact that he got acquitted on the rabbi's murder, even though even the Jews didn't like this rabbi. But remember, his name was Nosair, and his attorney was Roger Stavis. And Roger Stavis discovered that when he was first arrested in 1990-91 47 boxes of evidence had been removed from his apartment. Well, he managed to get these boxes, and apparently all of this evidence, 47 boxes, fill up your room, he said that nobody in the FBI was interested and ever even looked inside. So when Roger Davis gets a hold of these, he found a bunch of top secret documents from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the JFK Special Warfare Center. Well, there's no explanation to how he found Ali Muhammad's name collected to these documents. Maybe he signed one of them, I don't know. But he started to hunt for Ali Muhammad. This was back in December of '94. But Ali was busy. He had terrorists to create. So this guy badly wanted to speak to Ali Muhammad. Andrew McCarthy, and again, I think at the time he was the assistant U.S. attorney, he was an attorney there anyway, at the Southern District of New York, was completely freaked out. He was afraid that Ali Muhammad might say something. So McCarthy contacts Ali, who was at a safe house. Well, whose safe house, we don't know. Was it the CIA's safe house, FBI safe house, Mossad safe house? It doesn't say. Well, they all do have safe houses, and I learned about that in the Gideon Spies book by Gordon Thomas, which is all about the Mossad. Anyway, Ali's in Nairobi, and he flies back to the United States. I believe he went to California because Andrew McCarthy flies across the country with a couple of FBI goons, and they meet in Sacramento. They meet with Ali Muhammad. Again, this is back in December of '94. 5 years after Ali's gotten out. He's still serving in the reserves. McCarthy talks about the subpoena from Roger Davis, who badly wants to talk to this guy. As the story goes, he tells Ali Muhammad, ignore the subpoena. All this does come out later, but that's kind of crazy. Anyway, again, the FBI and the U.S. attorney, prosecutor, they fail to arrest Ali Muhammad. And there's no explanation as to why or how Andrew McCarthy was seemingly friends with Ali Muhammad and knew how to find him in Africa. There's a lot of missing details here. Well, they definitely did not want Ali to show up at that trial because they did not want him on the stand. Now, why? I keep asking myself this as I'm reading through this book. By the time the trial comes out, McCarthy blocks any information about Ali Muhammad coming from anyone, not Ali, not a former officer from Fort Bragg, nothing. They absolutely were fighting this guy and anything about Ali Muhammad. And when I first got a hold of Peter Lance's book, I read through it. Mainly, this is what I do, I have to admit. I go through the index, I look for specific people, certain terrorists, people that I know are involved, and then I read through the chapters. The second time I picked up that book, and it's about this thick. I mean, it's 800 pages or some crazy thing. I started at the introduction this time. And right there was the entire story. Well, it seems that Patrick Fitzgerald had gone on to become, I think, the U.S. Attorney for Illinois. I think that's how it went. And he fired off a few, I think like 3 or 4, threatening, and I mean threatening, I've read them, threatening letters to Peter Lance and to his publisher to stop the publishing of the book Triple Cross, and I believe it was the paperback format that was stuck in the hardback. I think it had already come out. He got super nasty, and he really tried to bully both Peter Lance and HarperCollins, the publisher. Well, that struck a chord with me because I thought, now, wait a minute. Why was this guy who flew to Sacramento and met this guy but didn't arrest him, why was he so freaked out that there must be something that McCarthy and Fitzgerald did not want us to know about? What was it? Could it be that Ali Muhammad was actually working for them or with them or for them? But wait, what was he doing for the FBI? Now, like Ahmad Salim, was he setting up sting operations only maybe for Osama bin Laden and Muslim men in the Middle East and Africa? Was he setting the bombs like Ahmad had? Was what was going on here? Was the things he was blowing up going to be blamed on Osama bin Laden? Maybe that's starting to look like these guys are doing the same thing on a different scale. Was his mission for Andrew McCarthy and Fitzgerald, or whoever he was working for, to frame Muslims using false flags? You know, false flags. Everybody knows about false flags. I also found it a bit absurd that Andrew McCarthy had listed 171 Muslim men as unindicted co-conspirators in the landmark bombings. Those bombings never happened. It was a sting, totally a sting. Well, they said they were going to do this, and they went to prison for it. He even listed Ali Mohammed in that case as an unindicted co-conspirator, but nothing ever happened to Ali Mohammed. He was arrested in September of '98, and he spent a short period of time in jail in Manhattan, and much of that time he was actually negotiating a plea deal. Wait a minute. He was the top terrorist? The trainer? Whose trainer was he? Well, everything they did with him has been sealed away from the American people. But we probably should ask what the heck was going on with Ali Mohammed, Patrick Fitzgerald, Andrew McCarthy. And this guy was the most dangerous man on the planet. And we not only set him free, but we put him in witness protection. And we paid for his keep. We probably should be asking, was Osama bin Laden the real bad guy that they told us he was? Or were we all being set up to believe instantly that, oh, it just so happens that these Muslims that they used to fight for us in Afghanistan were actually enemies of the state of Israel? Could that be why we keep finding an Israeli, an agent, a Mossad agent, or just an Israeli at every place we look, from the John F. Kennedy assassination to the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, to the Oklahoma City bombing, to 9/11, and even to Charlie Kirk's assassination? Who are the real bad guys anyway? Who are they? Now, today's day and age, in order to stay off the no-fly list, well, you have to stand with ethnic cleansing and genocide. Or guess what? You're going to be labeled as the terrorist, not them, not the genociders. You are quickly labeled by our media and our own government as a terrorist if you're not standing with genocide. Now, if somebody would have told me this 5 years ago, I would have thought they were insane. What in the world is going on? The media is a very, very powerful instrument of manipulation. You probably shouldn't even get any information from our mainstream media. And I just want to say this on closing. You probably figured out who the new boogeyman was going to be. Be careful who you listen to, even on YouTube and the alternative outlets. I know that's a lot to ponder. Like and subscribe, because I'm going to keep dropping this all out. And one day I'm going to put it all together. It'll probably be in a 3-part presentation, but there's so many connections here. Keep your seatbelt securely fastened, because we're going to hit some turbulence.